Hello everyone. Hope we're all well this Friday evening or morning or lunchtime, whenever it is for you. So welcome to the Friday Night Live. So I'll get straight on with the questions. The first one was an interesting one: coping with hot days and low mood slumps, often afternoons when it seems the whole of the town is out enjoying the sun and drinking. So to put that in context, over here in the UK, it's been really hot the last few days, um, ridiculously so, and we're not really equipped for it over here. Most people don't have air conditioning, so it just gets hotter and hotter. Um, I think, again, this is just a fairly basic point about being completely unrealistic about what alcohol does and doesn't do for you, and fantasizing about it. So this is quite an interesting point, actually. Alcohol is an energy source for humans, but not one that can be stored. So it's like eating calories that your body can't store as fat. So your body has to burn them off. And it does that usually by turning it into heat, which is why when you're drinking a lot, you tend to overheat, and why long-term heavy drinkers have all the broken veins around their nose. It's because they're constantly hot and they're red-faced all the time. So actually heat and alcohol don't mix at all in any way, shape or form, because when you drink you become hotter and hotter and hotter, which is not what you want when you're hot anyway. And also the other thing it does is ruin your sleep. So, I mean, personally, I've not been sleeping so well recently because of the heat, and I think alcohol on top of it would make it even worse. So again, I would just say be realistic. Alcohol and heat just doesn't mix in any way, shape or form. The low mood slumps often afternoons. I mean, I get that at the moment. I just find sitting around the house all day, I'm all right in the morning, but the time the afternoon comes, I kind of can't really be bothered to get on with any work, but kind of feel half guilty if I'm not working, and also going a bit stir crazy from being stuck in the house all day. And it's not particularly nice. But query how a sedative's that makes you feel anxious and unpleasant, um, it, and ruins your sleep, is going to make anything better. So yeah, I mean, so what I try and do is get away from the laptop and go for a walk, just get out the house or something, and that genuinely helps, as opposed to taking something that is going to anaesthetise things for 15 minutes and then wear off, leaving you increasingly anxious and lethargic. So again, I think it's a good question, but I think it's one where you just, again, you need to keep things in perspective and just keep in mind what we're talking about here. It's a drug that we happen to drink, and it doesn't do half the things we attribute to it. Something here actually. So this is from. Obviously, I don't like to use names because these videos get posted on the YouTube channel if I can work out how to do it, which half the time I can't. But anyway, so I would first name Jane, but Jane's gone into rehab, and she asked me personally to send on her thanks to everyone in the group for all the support she's got. So good luck to her, and yeah, thanks everyone for all the support you've given her. Um, the next question, it's quite a long one. I know you've talked about it, but I still wonder why my sleep is getting worse with my increased days of alcohol free. You're going to ask how many days, right? Laugh out loud. So I'm doing percentages again, and I'm now at approximately 90% alcohol free each month. Okay, and then there's two questions. They're quite long. Does sleep get altered when people stop and go like me? A couple of data points here and there. I've not been drinking for, I think, a month now, but I can't sleep at all. Case in point, it's 6 a.m. here in the US. I didn't even think twice about the fact that time went by that fast and I hadn't slept, and I'm not tired at all. Doctor gave me medicine which I used to take when it was midnight and I couldn't sleep, and I would take a quarter of the pill that would knock me out. So I wonder what's going on. My energy level and creativity level has increased by leaps and bounds, and it's as if I'm on a roller coaster high. Okay, so the second question: why do dreams feel better or different for someone who dreams a lot? My whole life, but after a certain number of days being without alcohol, I kind of understand dreams and why they happen. I can usually interpret my dreams, but sometimes I can just generally say that they are happy versus anxious or happy versus scary. But being alcohol free, I wonder how long it would take to continuously, minus having anxiety provoking situations, start to enjoy more sleep and more enjoyable and funny dreams. So there's a few points there. So that percentage point, So people need to do what they do, and the less you're drinking, the better. But if you're at 90% alcohol free each month, that means, I assume, you're drinking kind of like maybe 1 day out of 10. Now, the problem with that is you can need 10 days to recover sleep-wise from alcohol. So alcohol, don't forget, the general physiological effect is that your brain works by way of homeostasis, which is a chemical balance, and alcohol is a sedative. So your brain becomes oversensitized when you're drinking a lot, so it can work under the sedating effects of the alcohol. Then when the alcohol wears off, you're left overly sensitized, so anxious and sometimes depressed. And it's basically you've just messed up with the chemical balance in your brain. Now, how that impacts sleep is not about just falling unconscious for a few hours. When you sleep, you go through different cycles. And one of the main differentiating factors between the cycles is how deeply unconscious you are. Okay, so for deep sleep, as you'd expect, you're very deeply unconscious, but there's some very important sleep cycles, for example, REM, where your brain lights up almost as if you're fully conscious. So sleep isn't about just falling unconscious, it's about going up and down through cycles of consciousness almost until you're almost fully awake and then back into deep sleep. Now, what you do when you drink for the first part of the night, because you're overly sedated, you can't get into those higher consciousness sleep cycles at all. And in the second part of the night, because you're overly sensitized, most of the time you can't sleep at all and you just lie there awake and anxious. And if you do sleep, it's not proper sleep, it's more like dozing. And that's why people, when they drink, tend to wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning anxious. It's just the chemical reaction. So the problem is, if you drink on day one, you're probably not going to get back into a normal sleeping pattern for 2 or 3 days anyway. And don't forget, so this is a classic example. I was sleeping through the night fine, but with the heat, I've started waking up a lot in the night. And now back here in London, we're back to normal temperatures, but I'm still waking up in the night because I've got used to waking up in the night, and it's going to take me a few days to get back to normal. So, as I say, if the best you can do is 90%, then that's fine, but you're probably missing out on the good sleep because you're just not getting a long enough period not doing it. And as I say, it's if that's what you have to do, then that's what you have to do. The less you drink, the better. But the problem is with accepting percentages is you're almost giving yourself license to drink on certain days. And the problem with that is you do miss out on the great benefits of sobriety. So the best thing for me about being sober is your brain chemistry returns to normal. So you are as mentally resilient and well equipped to deal with the slings and arrows of life. Anyway, you're sleeping better and you're getting the best sleep. And the longer you do that for, the more those benefits accrue. Okay, if you're just drinking one every 10 days, you're not quite getting, you're probably 60% of where you could be. And that's the problem, I think. So I think you should really make an effort on working out why you're drinking on those 10% of days and what is it that's drawing you in. Because as I say, you're not reaching your full potential. And I think that probably carries off most of the questions there. I mean, the problem is, I think what you're talking about here is being awake and not feeling tired. You've been awake all night. You're talking about being on other medicine. I don't know what that medicine is, and I can't really comment on how it might be affecting you. There's other things you can do to aid sleep. So exercising earlier in the day is a good thing, because exercising makes, if you're doing something physical, you're going to sleep better. But if you do it very late at night, when you exercise, your body releases adrenaline and you get oxygen pumping and it wakes you up. So try to do it earlier in the day. Try also to cut out stimulants like caffeine and nicotine later in the day, and try not to eat massive meals at night time, because that interferes with your sleep as well. I think I'll move on to the next one. So there's a few questions all on this same topic this week, and it's, hi William, I would love you to talk about the timeline of withdrawals. Right, so talking about the purely physiological, so what we've been talking about here, sorry, what's the problem with the sound again? Okay, there's not much I can do about the sound at the moment. What I can do, because I'm doing this on my phone, you can only do Facebook Lives on your phone. but I am looking at a way of doing it via Zoom, which I think works better because I've got a proper microphone and everything. So if you can just muddle through with the sound for now, and I'll try and improve it by next week if possible. So timeline of withdrawals. So as I've mentioned, so I'm just checking, okay. So timeline for withdrawal. So don't forget when you're drinking, so you're taking a sedative, and after it wears off, there's a corresponding feeling of anxiety. So that's the main withdrawal. Now that overstimulation phase is usually over in about up to 3 days is about the maximum. If you are a very heavy long-term drinker, it could be anything up to 5. But that kind of anxious feeling where you can't sleep and you can't eat properly should be over in a maximum of 5 days. After that, if you're a regular heavy drinker, what you will find is you go through a period of feeling very tired and lethargic. And the reason for that is when you're drinking regularly, your brain's almost constantly in the overstimulation phase. Because it's constantly dealing with the sedating effects of alcohol. Now, when the alcohol doesn't come in at all, your brain doesn't need to be in that overstimulation phase. But the problem is when it goes out of that, it's the equivalent of drinking a lot of coffee and suddenly cutting it out. So you go through a period of feeling extremely tired and lethargic. So you can have anything up to 5 days for the actual anxiety withdrawal. And then it can be up to 3 weeks or even 4 weeks after that if you're a long-term heavy drinker where you just feel really tired and lethargic all the time. After that, you then can have an additional period of then needing to catch up on the lost sleep a bit before you really start to feel the benefits. So the majority of people, unless, as I say, if you're drinking a few glasses of wine or a few beers a night, it's a day or two. If you're a long-term heavy drinker, you'll be over the actual, what I call the withdrawal, i.e. that overstimulation phase in about 5 days maximum, but then you might have a few weeks of just feeling tired and lethargic all the time before you get back to normal. Someone's commented, I think for me, reminding myself of how one drink can lead to literally years of misery, but I also want to be positive. Lost so many friends, opportunities from drink, and now I know a combination of self-medicating. Was on medication making things worse, that sorted, oh beware of miracle pills. Yeah, I mean, I think this goes back to what I was talking about before, and being slightly concerned about the number of people who are recommending various pills to deal with things which I don't necessarily agree with, because I don't think a pill can change your mindset, which is one of the key parts of quitting drinking. And I completely appreciate, people need to do whatever they need to do to stop. But I think there's problems with taking pills. These pills that you take, they're drugs themselves anyway, and taking a drug to quit a drug always feels slightly counterintuitive to me anyway. The next question is an interesting one. Can we start an Alcohol Explained book club? Chapter a week, perhaps include a simple worksheet with highlights, questions for each chapter, then follow up discussion, etc. So again, I think that's a really good idea, but I don't really have the time to do it because I've got a full-time job, a young family, I'm home working at the moment, and I kind of fit this in and around things as best I can. If somebody wants to arrange this, then message me, and I'm more than happy to post it in the group, and if there's like a Zoom call or something, if I can possibly attend it, I will do. I'd be very glad to, but I just don't have the time to arrange it myself. So if anyone wants to volunteer for this or anything else, just message me, and I'll be happy to do whatever I can. But as I say, I'm just not at the moment in a position to be able to dedicate huge amounts of time and arrange it myself. How can we be compassionate advocates for being alcohol free? I feel like I want to tell everyone, but it's counterculture to do so. And you should sign up for the Dunder Mifflin virtual run. So this is a bit of a difficult one because, there's still something very shameful about stopping drinking for some strange reason. And it is difficult, but I would say, I think the best way you can advocate it is to you don't even have to speak about it loads. I think if you go out and don't drink and enjoy yourself, people naturally become interested. I've found that a lot. I don't tend to go on and on about it with people. But when people say you're not drinking and then they start to question why aren't you drinking, you start to talk about the fitness and the sleep, and you don't have to sell it, you just have to tell the truth. And I find the biggest way to advocate is to go out with people you've been drinking with for years, and you just go out and enjoy yourself, and they are naturally interested because there's not many people who don't question their drinking. We think that we're the only ones with a drink problem, but the vast majority of people question their drinking. Virtually everyone ends up drinking too much on occasion. People wake up feeling rubbish, even if it's not a full-blown hangover, they're tired. And people question it a lot. And when they see someone out and not drinking and enjoying themselves, they are interested. And if you're not really pushing it on people, you'll generally find people start questioning you about it. Someone said about how about an Alcohol Explained run? Because you need one more bowling pin up in the air. So again, if that's a thing that people want to do, message me, and if someone else is prepared to arrange it, I'm happy to lend whatever I can to assist. So that, again, this is a question: can you talk more of the timeline with alcohol? Okay, so I think I've covered that off. The second question: and how did you decide to research and write a book? I'm very curious by nature, and I'm hoping I can use that towards my advantage to becoming completely alcohol-free. So I didn't really decide to research and write a book. I just developed an interest. So I became interested in sort of addiction generally from reading Alan Carr's Quit Smoking book, which I read in my teens, I think, so quite a long time ago. And I just became interested. So I never set out to write a book. I just became interested, and I continued to drink, and I drank more and more and more, and it got completely out of hand. But I think having gone through that process, but approached it in a more sort of not scientific, but probably objective way, and tried to sort of concentrate on what's actually going on and pay a bit of attention to it, was all I really did. So it was never really done with the intention of writing a book. It was more kind of accidental. Someone's posted, I'm interested in the live, but on my first holiday, so it'll be catch up. Cravings is my downfall. So a holiday is a big thing for people. And again, I think it comes down to mindset. And I did a chapter on this in Alcohol Explained too. But there's a few ways to approach it. One of them I've already spoken about, which is to just be realistic and just see it for what it is. So obviously you go on holiday and you go out by the pool and people are sat around drinking their ice cold drinks, and it can be very tempting to think, oh, that looks really nice. But I can't tell you what works for me, but I can tell you how I see it. I just see a cancerous drug that we happen to drink. And it's a drug that makes people feel slightly dulled, and then leaves a corresponding feeling of anxiety that they need another dose to get rid of. Okay, that's what I see. I also can't help but see, when I see people drinking, the disturbed sleep they get. So that's just so deeply embedded in me now. I can't, every time I see an alcoholic drink, I think of that horrible thing of waking up at 3 or 4 in the morning feeling anxious. And the other thing I always think of is how it puts your heart rate up. So when your heart rate goes up, your body starts to send messages to say, sit down and rest. And the higher your heart rate goes, the stronger that feeling becomes. So when you're drinking, you're putting your heart rate up, and it makes you want to sit down and rest. And that's the other thing alcohol does. It makes people feel very lethargic. It robs you of that feeling of, wanting to get out and attack the day. And that's what I see when I see drinking. And I think when you start to see it that way, you can't really very easily unsee it. And it's like a muscle. You do need to exercise it. You do need to do it. And the first few times it can be difficult, and you can be constantly reminding yourself. But I've been 6.5 years now, so I've been on however many holidays. And it's just second nature for me now. I just don't have any particular desire. The next one's, again, a timeline for healing. So I think I've covered that off. This is a very interesting one. I don't want or need alcohol anymore after 47 days alcohol free. So fantastic, well done, but still have that nagging crave at times. Have you any advice for someone in my position, please? So this comes back to cravings, which I've already dealt with, and the way to deal with them really is to be realistic and see it for what it is. But I would also say this: don't forget, people who have a problem drinking, the usual way of stopping is not to get rid of cravings, it's to just resist them. And that works. Some people manage to make that work. It's hard work and it's not easy and it's not the most pleasant way of going about stopping, but some people do make it work. And even doing it that way, it's far better than continuing to drink. So an ideal way of stopping is to never have cravings, to counter all of them, so eventually you just don't crave alcohol anymore. That's the ideal. But we don't live in an ideal world. Most of us don't live ideal lives. But how I would look at it is, if you have cravings that are really, really few and far between, that's still fantastic. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. If you have and you say a nagging crave, not like an overpowering one, so almost just like a background voice, ooh, look at them sat round the pool, that would be nice to have a cold beer. I wouldn't even worry about it. Go through the process to counter the craving, but don't forget, if you've cut out 95% of your cravings and the 5% you have got, you've demolished their power by like 90%, I'd count that as a victory. And you'll probably go through the rest of your life never drinking again, which is fantastic. So I wouldn't worry too much. Don't worry if you get the odd craving. It'd be amazing if we didn't, because we're constantly bombarded with these images of people drinking and laughing and happy. So I wouldn't worry too much. Keep working on them. So if you crave, going back to the holiday example, because it's holiday season, you get out on holiday and you see the people sitting around of an evening drinking. Work on it. See it for what it is. Think of the increased heart rate, the bad sleep, all the rest of it. But don't worry too much if it's occasional and you can deal with it anyway. This comment, some lightness on how to forgive ourselves for all the bad decisions and wrongdoing while under the influence of alcohol, realising we can't go back or erase. However, trying to move forward in sober days with the memories of those can be upsetting. And then thank you, William, for all you bring to us. That's nice. I hope to have both your books delivered by the weekend. Okay, hope you like them. So what I say with regard to all the things you may or may not have done when you've been under the influence of alcohol makes us do obnoxious things, not because it brings out the real person in us, but because it stops our brains working in the way that they ought to. So one of the ways it does this with emotions, how emotions work is an emotion is set off in your brain, and then another part of your brain stops it from getting too out of hand. And that part of your brain that stops it from getting too out of hand is very easily sedated by alcohol. So when you're drinking, your ability to regulate emotions is demolished. So if something triggers off an emotion like anger, your brain is no good at trying to regulate it, which is why people, when they're drunk, they lose their temper very easily, or they become really introspective, and you've got like the typical examples of, people calling their exes at 4 a.m, or crying over the whatever it is, drunks crying and all fighting and all the rest of it. It messes with your emotions. So when your emotions are all messed up, you're not who you ought to be. You're not the real you. So I would take that and just bear that in mind. But also, how I always think of it, if you take a drug that makes you do something, so say there's a drug and you take it and it makes you kill people, right? If you take that drug knowing it makes you kill people and you kill someone, then you're responsible for that person's death because you've knowingly taken the drug in full awareness of what the consequences will be. But if someone spikes your drink with it and you drink it unknowingly and kill someone, in that situation I would say you're not morally responsible for that person's death because you didn't deliberately take the drug. Now I see drinking alcohol as far closer an analogy to the second example, because most people don't realise what alcohol does to them. We see alcohol, we're sold alcohol. When we're growing up, we see people drinking, and the idea of alcohol is that it's fun. It makes a better night out. It's more interesting. It's more amusing. It's more fun. We're not told the truth about it, which is that it messes our emotions up and makes us do horrible things. So if you've done something bad when you're drinking, don't feel fully responsible for it, because one, it wasn't the real you, and two, we drink alcohol without really a full knowledge of how it affects us, which is one of the problems. you can't change the past. All you can do is change the future. So if you're stopping, this is what I always say to people: if you have stopped drinking, you have done all you can do to make sure that that behaviour never happens again. And apart from that, you can't turn the clock back. So you just need to crack on. Unfortunately, even without alcohol, we all do stupid things, and you just need to accept that and move on with things. It's that simple. Another question: how long do stimulants last in your body after the alcohol's worn off? So that's already done. I'd like to know how to deal with triggers when you drink at home and can't afford to move. That's an interesting one, because that's an extreme thing, isn't it? So you drink at home, so you're going to move home presumably to try and avoid the triggers, but then you're going to end up at another home, aren't you, and just want to drink at home anyway. What you need to do there is find something to do at home that isn't drinking. So read a book, or go for a walk, or watch a film. Any one of a million things I think would work. Someone's put here: I've struggled with bulimia and drinking since I was 15. I'm 32 now and have been able to kick both dangerous habits for months or years at a time, but always come back. Alcohol-free day 3 today and bulimia-free day 1. Are alcoholism and eating disorders related? I'm sure my eating disorder came first. So I have to confess I don't know much about eating disorders. So I don't know. What I would say is alcohol affects our appetites. So when you drink, your body releases dopamine. And dopamine is essentially a motivator. It makes you want to do things. Because don't forget, when you take a sedative, like alcohol, your brain's reacting to it to redress the chemical imbalance caused by the over-sedation. And one of the things it does is release dopamine, which is a kind of a stimulant. It makes you want to do things. So that's one of the reasons people can wake up and be hungry. It's dopamine, because it makes you want to, among other things, eat. Alcohol also anaesthetises the sensors that tell you when you are full, so you can eat more. And rather strangely, depressants are appetite stimulants. And the reason for that is eating requires a lot of energy from the body. So your body usually tries to get you to eat when you are relaxing. So if you take a depressant, that's usually an appetite stimulant. So for all those reasons, alcohol makes you eat more, but falsely, because it's food you don't always need. So without straying into the area that I don't know about, which is eating disorders, what I can say is alcohol messes up your appetites and messes up what you want to eat. Okay, so I can't imagine the two of them are going to be in any way, shape or form helpful to one another. In fact, I could quite believe that heavy drinking leads to eating disorders. The other thing, of course, with chronic alcoholism, chronic alcohol dependency, is we become conditioned to not eat. Because we consume alcohol by drinking it, its effects are lessened hugely when we've got food in our stomach. So we kind of subconsciously avoid eating when we're drinking. And that's why the chronic alcohol dependent person is usually stick thin. It's because they stop eating, because eating and then they drink and they don't get the full effect from the alcohol. So they just end up avoiding eating. As I say, I'm not an expert on eating disorders, but alcohol completely messes up with your appetite. I'd like advice for people who spend all week desperately wanting to stop drinking, then cave each and every weekend. What can we do to get out of this cycle? So there's a few points here to make. Firstly is you need to analyse what it is about the weekend that makes you want to drink. I presume just your Friday night you get home and it's what you do. So you need to start analysing that a bit more and thinking about what it actually gives to you and what it doesn't. I've talked about that briefly before. Don't forget as well, there is a dynamic, because I was a weekend drinker for years, and the dynamic is that when you are drinking, it's not particularly pleasant. You wake up and you feel rotten. Going back to the time frame we talked about before, you might wake up, say on a Sunday, feeling absolutely awful, anxious, depressed, tired, all the rest of it, vow you're never going to drink again. But after say 24 hours, the alcohol's left your system, then a few more days, the anxiety's gone, then you've got a couple of days sleep. So you're just about coming up to the weekend when you're feeling at your best again. So it's a different mindset. You're not looking at drinking. When you feel well rested and sober and your brain's where it should be chemically, you feel resilient, you feel confident, and you feel happy. Everything looks better. So you look at drinking and you think, oh yeah, it's fine, it's good fun, I'm going to crack on. And then by the time Monday comes around again, you're feeling anxious, depressed, scared, blah, 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 and everything looks awful. And that's the cycle I was in for years, because when Friday came, nothing was a problem. I was strong, I was alert, I was feeling good, and I didn't care about drinking. It was fine, I would just do it. And it wasn't until Monday came around that I was feeling in absolute bits because I've been drinking all weekend. The thing to do is you need to know that you are going to be hitting the weekend confident and happy, but you need to recognise that you're only feeling that confidence and happiness because you're not drinking, and you're robbing yourself of that confidence by doing that over the weekend. Something to do that is useful is have something to do at the weekend that isn't drinking, because that's another thing people do. They sometimes, so for example, if your weekend is, if you are in the office, get home from the office or wherever you're working, or if you're not, you're working at home, shut the laptop on a Friday afternoon or whatever and start drinking. The temptation is you stop drinking, but you don't really make a plan for what else to do. So you can end up just sitting around staring at the four walls or whatever. So just plan some stuff. And what you need to factor in is you're suddenly going to have twice or three times as much as a weekend, because you're not wiping out the whole of Saturday sitting around feeling sorry for yourself, and then sitting around drinking, feeling tired all the time. So you will have energy, you will be able to do stuff, do some DIY, get out for a walk, get out for a run, do some exercise, meet some friends, do something, have some plans. That's always a good way of doing it. And in particular, if your trigger point is as soon as you get home or you shut the laptop on a Friday, think about what you're going to do. I'm going to get some takeout, I'm going to sit and watch a film, I'm going to put a games console on, I'm going to read a book, whatever it is, plan it and do it. And then look forward to waking up and having a day, because you will have, as I say, your weekends, when you're drinking, your weekends are poor sleep, heavily sedated or feeling awful. And it goes really quickly, because when you're feeling awful and half asleep, nothing particularly happens and then half the day's gone. When you're not, you've suddenly got full 2 days plus a Friday evening, and it's loads of time. You can do so much stuff. So try and get something in, do something different. Love your talk. Seems like mindset is everything. Do you have any new insights about that topic? Really liked your previous mindset talk. What do you think about protecting your sobriety? Is this an issue, or have you completely lost any desire to drink? And when does that happen? I have to stop talking to people about why I don't drink unless they are genuinely interested, but it takes some time to explain. I've heard things like you're jealous, how long you're stopping for, that one quite a lot. Just have one drink already, and my question is how to stay in the right mindset and not get thrown off by other people's opinions. So that's a very good one. Mindset is everything, I think, and obviously I've spoken about it a bit already, so I won't go over it again. So the first point there that's an interesting, is it an issue, or have you completely lost any desire to drink, and when does that happen? So yeah, I have lost any desire to drink, but it's not, I can't say that I don't have the same images of like going on holiday and you walk out and everyone's sat around the pool and having a cold beer. But I think I've become so used to countering them immediately. It's almost second nature now. Mental processes are like muscles. The more you use them, the stronger they get, and the more they become second nature. So I almost don't even consciously do it anymore. I just have no interest in it. It's become a second nature thing to me. How long does it last? Or how long does it take? So I've been 6.5 years not drinking now, but I don't think you need to wait that long. I think if you put the work in, it can be almost immediate. And as I say, the more you put into it, the more you see it for what it is, the quicker it is. So I would say it is everything mindset, and you need to work at changing a mindset, and it is difficult because we're always bombarded with images and people saying about how great alcohol is. But the fortunate thing is we do have truth on our side. That's the thing. You can't get away from the fact that alcohol is a cancerous drug, You can't get away from the fact that all it really does is just dull you slightly and then leave a corresponding feeling of anxiety. You can't get away from the fact that it ruins your sleep, and you can't get away from the fact that it increases your heart rate and leaves you feeling lethargic and tired. That's it. So that's the beauty of it. We although we have all these false images, we have the truth on our side, and it's very easy to keep going back to it, and you need to keep doing that. Talking to people about why you don't drink, I've touched on that before, but what I would say is, what is it, like 87% of the population drink or something ridiculous, so you're an elite minority when you decide not to drink, and you need to frankly just stop caring about what other people think about you. And it is difficult, and we do kind of almost feel guilty when we're not drinking with people. But it's your right to do what you want to do. People cannot force you to drink. So I think rather than dealing with each individual thing as people say it, I think you just need to work on your own mindset of not caring. You need to know what you're doing is correct, and it is correct, and everyone else is wrong. And just be comfortable with that and let them say what they want to say, because you're going to be the one sleeping through the night and waking up the next day with bags of energy. And they won't be. You're not going to be the one getting teary or aggressive or angry on the night out, because you won't be drinking and they will. So try not to worry too much about that. The other thing as well, don't forget the body language is quite a big thing. I think there's a tendency when we're feeling put upon to kind of bow down a bit and cave our shoulders in. If you look people in the eye when you're telling them you don't drink, and stand up fairly straight, people, and I'm not talking about doing it really aggressively, but people, if you look people in the eye when you say things, people tend to take it a bit more seriously and might be a bit less inclined to start taking the mickey or questioning what you're saying. But what I would say is, it's like that old thing about boats. It's not water that sinks boats, it's water getting inside the boat that sinks them. And you need to just make sure you're a watertight boat. The sea is other people's opinions, and you just make yourself watertight against them. People have opinions. Fact of the matter is, unfortunately, most people are fairly ignorant, particularly about drinking. You know the truth and they don't. Let them have their opinions and just don't worry about it. So the final point is, do you have your books translated for other languages? I would really need it in Hungarian, that language. So I had it translated into 2 languages, and it's not gone well. So I've kind of given up on that. It's translated into French, and I found out recently that the translation's really poor, so it's having to be redone, which is not ideal. And I had it translated into Polish as well, and I think the problem is, not being a native speaker, I've got no way of even telling people about it, so it's very, very difficult. So unfortunately not, and I don't think it's going to be one that I go much in for in the future anyway. I hope that's been useful for everyone. I will post again next Thursday to see if there's interest in another live session. Have a good weekend, everyone. And if anyone's in the FFS group, I'm on with Dawn on Sunday, which will be good. So I'm looking forward to that. I think that's 7. So hopefully see some of you there. Thanks, bye.